So hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of NeuroPsyQ. My name's Phidias and I'm a neuropathologist, and today we're going to be talking about glioblastoma. Glioblastoma is a disease that we study here at the Diamandis lab. It is a form of brain cancer, and unfortunately it is the most common and aggressive form of brain cancer. Now, while it may be less common than some other types of cancer that we're familiar with, like breast, lung, colon cancer, brain cancer, and especially glioblastoma, is a disease that affects not only old people, but people in their young adults, and also children. Because of this, it means that it's affecting people at prime times in their careers and family lives, making it a common cause of productive years of life loss. Therefore, it is a problem that we need to address. Now, there's been a lot of clinical trials that have tried to combat this disease, and unfortunately, over the last 50 years, we've seen little progress in our ability to treat this disease. What the goal of today's lecture is to look at the biology of glioblastoma under the microscope and try to understand why current therapies have failed, and perhaps try to brainstorm new ways that we can treat this disease. As biologists, we think that failures are likely due to our imperfect understanding of the disease, and by better understanding how this disease behaves, we'll be able to develop new therapies to target it. So without further ado, let's head to the microscope and take a look at what a glioblastoma looks like at the cellular level. So here we are, looking at a H&E or hematoxylin and eosin stained section of a glioblastoma resected following surgery. We have multiple fragments of brain tissue here, and you can immediately see that there are different levels of pink hues and purple hues. And as we learned in the episode 1, hematoxylin labels DNA and therefore highlights nuclei, whereas eosin labels proteins and therefore labels cytoplasms that are usually protein rich pink. So this area here is relatively pink. It looks like the brain tissue that we are accustomed to seeing, but immediately we can see that other areas are much more cellular, as shown here with the purple. And you can see there's a gradient of what appears to be relatively normal brain tissue here that's pink, and as we move closer and closer to this very purplish area, we see that this is in fact the tumor. Now let's look at some of the features and see if we can understand the biology of glioblastoma. So obviously the excess number of nuclei is a hallmark feature of cancer, which is hypercellularity. And this is of course due to cells rapidly dividing, as cancer is a disease of dysregulated cell growth. And if we hunt around closely, what we find is that we can look for cells that are actively dividing. Oh, and here we see some here. We see some cells where the chromosomes are in fact condensed. You can see it in the bottom window, where we have cells in different aspects of the cell cycle. Here the chromosomes are aligned nicely in metaphase, and here they're splitting apart in anaphase. Oh, and here's another one here in metaphase, showing that this is a very highly proliferative cancer. Now, one of the ways that we've tried to combat this hallmark feature of cancer is by using drugs that directly target cell division, and these are the basis for chemotherapies and radiation therapy. And what these do is that they damage the DNA during cell division and lead to cell death in rapidly proliferating cells, such as cancer. Here is another anaphase, cell dividing to form two daughter cells, and another one. And because of this rapid proliferation that we're seeing in this cancer, these drugs are very effective in killing 99.9% of cancer cells. But for whatever reason, there is some cancer cells that appear to be much more slowly dividing and thus are not subject to these cytotoxic drugs. These cells appear to have stem cell properties, and therefore they are often referred to as cancer stem cells. And that's going to be a topic for future episodes where we understand the biology of these cancer stem cells by making correlations to normal stem cells. Now, given that mechanism of therapy didn't work, people looked around for other biological features that were consistent in these tumors to try to overcome the resistance to these cytotoxic agents. And one of the key features that was common in all glioblastomas is this feature of microvascular proliferation. You see these very large, dilated, multi-luminal blood vessels here, which is a very common feature of this tumor. And it is hypothesized that these cancer cells secrete pro-angiogenic or pro-blood vessel forming molecules like vascular endothelial growth factor to create these rich, large blood vessels that supposedly provide the oxygen and nutrients that this cancer needs to divide. So the theory was that blocking the formation of these vessels would be a very effective therapy for this very vascular tumor. While based on very sound logic and biological observations, these therapies have unfortunately failed to produce any improvement in patient care. In fact, oftentimes, as we see in this second sample here, the tumor actually self-occludes many of these vessels, leading to self-induced tumoral necrosis, as we see here, forming these very characteristic pseudopalisade of cells that surround necrosis. And this is a very characteristic feature of this disease. Here again you see viable tumor cells surrounding areas of more pinkish material where cancer nuclei have died. Now, what science has found is that in these really necrotic or hypoxic areas, cells are much more resistant to conventional therapies like chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Thus, this form of necrosis or blockage of these blood vessels actually provides an advantage to the cancer to resist conventional therapies. So if these features, proliferation, microvascular proliferation, are not working, what other features of the tumor biology can we see that would be of relevance to developing new therapies? Now, one thing you can see here is that this tumor is very, very infiltrative, and one of the other forms of therapy, which is surgical resection, its goal is to cut out as much of the cancer from the brain as possible. But this infiltrative biology of the tumor makes it very, very difficult for a surgeon to completely remove all the cancer cells. You can see here we have an area of hypercellularity, but as you move away and zoom in, you see that these dark nuclei, which are the cancer cells, are infiltrating through the normal brain structures surrounding things like neurons and blood vessels, making it very, very difficult to safely remove all the cancer cells without compromising many important brain functions like our personality, our speech, and our coordination. And this is what makes this disease exquisitely difficult to treat. It's one of the few diseases, few cancers that doesn't metastasize, but yet because of its infiltrative nature, it is almost impossible to resect and provide a cure through surgical means. Now, interestingly, very few cells following development undergo such robust migration in the brain. Migration of neurons typically ends 20 or 22 weeks during embryonic life, and thus could we possibly target these cancer cells by taking advantage of their selective ability to infiltrate otherwise static brain tissue? And that, I think, is a very attractive target that has yet to be tried in these kind of high profile clinical trials that we've talked about already. Now, interestingly, as we talked about, some of these very features are again reminiscent of stem cells of normal development. So again, by understanding the biology of normal neural stem cells, we will be able to hopefully target not only the slowly dividing cells that are resistant to current approaches to radiation and chemotherapy, but perhaps we can also target the migratory properties of these cancer cells that are also shared with early neuroblasts or immature neurons that are migrating to their final destination in the brain. I think these are exciting avenues that we can investigate. Similarly, is there something about the hypoxic regions that we could take advantage of? So the fraction of cells that are left behind following radiation chemotherapy can be targeted by agents that reach the hypoxic areas that are otherwise resistant to these traditional therapies. I think these are some exciting areas where we could take advantage of the things we see under the microscope to better target and lead to more durable responses in these cancers. There are, of course, other things that we cannot see under the microscope that may be of relevance. There is molecular changes that have been tried to be targeted, but these have unfortunately also failed. It's perhaps noteworthy that many of these molecular therapies have targeted proliferative pathways, so perhaps there are other molecular pathways that are perturbed in these cancer cells that are not related to proliferation that can also be targeted in efforts to not only kill the proliferative compartment, but also the slowly dividing stem cells that are also present in these tumors. So I hope that gives you a good overview of the biological principles of this disease at the cellular level, and hopefully it also explains why some of the therapies that have had good rationale have unfortunately failed to improve the outlook of this disease. Again, we have hypercellularity, we have atypical cells that are undergoing rapid cell division, we have microvascular proliferation, we have infiltration into nearby normal brain that makes it difficult to resect, and of course we have these pseudopalisading areas of necrosis where there are hypoxic areas of the tumor that perhaps could provide some resistance to conventional therapies. So let's end there, and we'll pick up more of the biology of glioblastoma in future episodes. So hopefully that was informative. What we learned today is that glioblastoma is a very aggressive form of brain cancer. We've learned some of the hallmark features such as hypercellularity, tumor proliferation, microvascular proliferation, necrosis, and brain infiltration are the kind of hallmark features that we can readily identify in these tumors almost in every case. We've learned that targeting some of these, although seemed like a rational idea, have proven not to be effective. Things like chemotherapy and radiation therapy that try to target the proliferating tumor cells appear only to partially target this disease, with residual cancer stem cells driving resistance and recurrence. We've seen that targeting microvascular proliferation with anti-angiogenic therapies, also a very good idea in principle, turned out to be ineffective at prolonging the survival of these patients. There are, of course, other avenues that we haven't yet explored, such as the possibility of targeting migrating biology of these cells as they infiltrate brain tissue, and other biology that may be unique to specific niches, like the hypoxic areas of the tumor. Hopefully these will be discussed in future episodes of this program through interviewing experts in emerging areas like immunotherapy, and also by having some of our own trainees talk about the exciting work that's going on in our own lab. So thank you for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe so you can be notified when the next episode comes.